Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And that brings us to a title which has been designated by Criterion at spine number 1242. And this is a work which is described as being from the year 2017. And the name of the filmmaker is Guillermo del Toro. And the name of the work is The Shape of Water. This is the film which is described as being from the year 2017, and the name of the filmmaker is Guillermo del Toro. This is a story by Guillermo del Toro and screenplay by Guillermo del Toro and Vanessa Taylor, directed by Guillermo del Toro, and starring in among its cast people like Octavia Spencer and Michael Stuhlbarg, Doug Jones, Richard Jenkins, Michael Shannon, and starring Sally Hawkins they're all great performances. This is such a great film. What an amazing achievement this is. This is the work which is The Shape of Water. So The Shape of Water, the really highly acclaimed and so successful and very entertaining and very moving film from Guillermo del Toro is it's a visual treat, and it's such a romantic film, and it's a kind of film about maybe in a sense breaking expectations while also at the same time celebrating certain, say, cinematic genres and movements, and telling a really fascinating story that is set in this 1960s America, Maryland area. In Baltimore, Maryland, I understand. And this is in the thick of the Cold War and U.S. military and certain government secrets, and also a currency about socio-economic concerns that also sort of break through in terms of our character arcs of the number of characters that we meet in this film. So while also being a monster movie, it's also a suspense film. It is a romance film. It is a film about, it's a film about identity. It's an exploration of sexuality. It's a song and dance musical number film. It's a sort of a comedy of errors, and it's a science fiction special effects masterpiece. It's one heck of a good time at the movies, and so it's great to see this film take shape in the form of this Criterion Collection physical media release, and also it's great to see another Guillermo del Toro work enter the fold of Criterion's physical media catalog. I have to apologize. My lighting is very bad. I'm not as good as the lighting in great films such as this, so it's maybe a little bit difficult to make out the title, The Shape of Water, as I've lit it in my room here. I apologize, but this is The Shape of Water, the Criterion release, and this is the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray release. So we have a 4K disc and then a Blu-ray disc. You can watch the film on your choice if you have this particular edition. So, and I'll speak a little bit about the presentation and the supplements a little bit later in this YouTube video discussion. But before I do, let me try to endeavor to speak about the plot or story structure of this work, The Shape of Water, and I'll try to avoid talking too specifically for the benefit of those who have not yet seen this really great and entertaining and lovely film, The Shape of Water. But so where to begin? we can speak about. We meet a number of characters. Eliza, Zelda and Eliza, let's say, they are portrayed by Octavia Spencer. Zelda portrayed by Octavia Spencer, and Eliza portrayed by Sally Hawkins. They work as cleaners, like janitor cleaners in this government facility. And they, based on their work and their interactions with the people that are working there, there are some that are there are scientists there. There are also some military personnel there. And one day there seems to be some kind of secret, some kind of government asset or newly acquired government asset that apparently is the subject of some kind of scrutiny and study at this research laboratory, military compound base structure. And Sally Hawkins' character and Octavia Spencer's character, but maybe specifically Sally Hawkins' character, slowly but surely, in sort of the early, say, pulse beats of the film, begins to understand that what the government has acquired is something that is a living creature, and it's known as amphibian man, or perhaps it's regarded in, say, the credits and how it's discussed as amphibian man, because this is something that's not human. It has certain human features and forms, but it's not human. It seems to be an aquatic creature that has maybe human-like features in terms of face and appendages and digits, and also eyes and a mouth. But also there's also different forms of communication that seem to be nonverbal. There are other attributes that also come to the fore, shall we say, as the film progresses. But this is one part of this really amazingly structured film, because Eliza, the Sally Hawkins character, begins to form a relationship, a bond with this creature that is in captivity. And the circumstances of the creature's captivity are expressed to us in very cinematic terms as being very harsh and very violent in the hands of the character of Strickland, who's portrayed with such frightening, aggressive ferocity in the hands of Michael Shannon's performance. It's really quite a dangerous character, but it's a formidable antagonist, which is but one of many moving parts to this, because when things come to a head, and when Eliza's relationship with this aquatic creature, this amphibian creature, this creature in captivity, when it becomes to the point of really sympathizing with the creature, and indeed perhaps the potential of developing a real intimate relationship with this creature, then questions arise as to the extent to which that type of relationship is indeed possible. There are also some questions about Eliza's own past that may come back to haunt her, may come back to prove somewhat significant, or not, as the case may be. There's also the military complex perspective that seeks to maintain a grip on this creature no matter what, in terms of captivity, and indeed maybe scenes of torture. And then there's also the sort of humane aspect of perhaps wanting to free the creature and rescue the creature no matter what the cost. And in this milieu, we are introduced to not just Eliza, not just Octavia Spencer's character, but also Michael Stuhlbarg and his role in the facility, and his sort of allegiances, whether he might be allies with our protagonist, or maybe allies with the antagonist. You have to watch the film to find out. And also other characters in Eliza's sort of personal orbit, such as the Richard Jenkins character Giles, in a sort of lovely back and forth in terms of Eliza's own, say, perspective. Because I mean, I should have said this at the outset. Eliza, as a character, is someone who is mute, who doesn't speak verbally. She interacts with people at her work. She interacts with her neighbors, Giles, but she expresses herself through actions and through a sign language, and also through a kind of understanding that is shared, say, between her and Giles and her and others. But it's based on nonverbal communication. But it is expressed in cinematic terms in ways and flourishes and visual and cinematic treats in the hands of Guillermo del Toro. That is just a feast for the senses. It's truly breathtaking. So this becomes one of the key components in terms of a focus on communication, a focus on sort of the development of intimacy, the urgency for a call to action that is I think, made even more apparent by the construction of the presentation of the social milieu, the 1960s Americana social milieu, with all its ups and downs, as expressed in the sort of microcosm of the film The Shape of Water. So we have, as I mentioned, this film could be said to be expressions of sexuality and identity and confidence. And one of the stories that emerges is the notions of race and uh, uh, racial representation and treatment in certain, say, anecdotes of the film that could be said to be pockets of a subplot, but also have kind of ramifications going forward in terms of the immediacy of the direct plot of the film, and also aspects of sexuality. Giles is the Richard Jenkins character is a gay man, and he is also an artist, and he also is shown to have his own say subplot or character arcs and dynamics involving his own employment prospects, and also his own, say, desires and attractions that he tries to express in terms of other characters that he meets. And there's some really fascinating scenes involving pie and dessert that is also shared with some fun and affection with one of his best friends and one of Eliza's best friends, because Eliza and Giles are really, they have a lovely friendship with each other. But it also allows us to get to know Giles and his own, say, sense of self, and what it is that he is forced to sort of confront in terms of his own, say, externally imposed struggles that also have a real effect in terms of what he chooses in his own path and sort of the trajectory of the film. So, as well as an exploration of sort of the nature and dynamic of I mean, nature of dynamic of this kind of love story, because among other things, this film The Shape of Water is a love story. I mean, it's a love story of a number of components. I mean, you could say that the Giles story arc is in its way its own love story. The Eliza character arc is itself its own love story. And we also see various, say, variations on the theme, how some of those stories, maybe Strickland's, Michael Shannon's character arc could be said in its own way to be its own kind of love story. But we see variations on the theme and relationships, even on sometimes even in terms of the running time, albeit somewhat briefly, but still they make quite an impact because they also indicate variations on the theme, like Octavia Spencer's Zelda character, for instance. But the point is that it's Guillermo del Toro and company seem to be providing a number of, say, almost episodic story points that are themselves a variation on the theme, that can see various ways in which certain characters, depending on the plot, can be said to be experiencing love on, say, the downslope, or maybe a breakdown of the relationship or relationships, or perhaps even the possibility of some kind of forging of a new relationship, depending on which character we're talking about. They're all assembled in this grand design of a film that is also a heist movie. It's a Cold War spy thriller. It's also a cat and mouse chase thriller. It's a romantic, like 1940s musical. It's also it's a kind of a human drama, or maybe human amphibian drama that really goes places. It really pushes the envelope in terms of, say, explorations of sexuality. When I say pushing the envelope, I mean it really. I think I should take that back. Maybe pushing the envelope isn't the right phrase. I really should say something like, it is going to very intimate places and asking questions of a very intimate nature about things like sort of expressions of sexuality, the sort of mechanics of sexuality, and the ways in which that type of it's all one and the same in a manner of speaking. Kind of a physical manifestation of an emotional output that needs to be not just addressed, but also it needs to be fulfilled. And characters like Eliza and others will really stop at nothing to really seek that fulfillment. And it's indeed the quest for that, and whether or not they succeed or fail, it forms the great basis of the suspense and tension of this film, which is really it's undeniable, and it's wonderfully far fetched. It's also wonderfully bizarre. It's also so it's so attainable as well, which is the great genius of Guillermo del Toro. I mean, you really go for this conceit and this setup, and you never lose track of this, and it really grips you in a way that makes the world very believable, and the circumstances that evolve and unfurl before very so very believable. Uh, it's a cinematic treat that is relying on many different, say, homages to cinematic pasts, while also forging its way forward. It's this. There are some great references to 1930s and 40s Hollywood musicals on the one hand, but it's also a tour de force in terms of special effects and the great merging of model effects and also CGI, which is a great combination, while telling a story that is very much part of the sort of 1960s cultural dynamic of 1960s America, but told through the lens of 2017, so not in the too distant past. So, and it's also a monster movie. It's this great monster movie. It's an homage to, say, Universal horror classics. I think one of the great examples of this is The Creature from the Black Lagoon, but it's a twist on the tale, and it's done in a way, instead of a kind of a monster as being an antagonist. Well, what if the monster is indeed one of our heroes? And what do we do with that dynamic, and then how do we put a spin on the on a sort of a horror classic? And so, in many ways, this is Creature from the Black Lagoon, colon a love story. So in that way, it's great homage, while also twisting the path in the way that's undeniably Guillermo del Toro's, and it's a love letter to cinema. It's also and also it's this grand sense of entertainment, and it's so moving, and the performances are really fantastic. I mentioned Richard Jenkins, Octavia Spencer, Doug Jones. I should mention too, in terms of his amphibian aquatic presence. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon. I'm a big Michael Shannon fan. And so a big fan of his performances, and this is one of the reasons why. This is a frightening character that he imposes here. Michael Stuhlbarg, it's a great performance, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the great Sally Hawkins. I am a huge fan of Sally Hawkins, as is Guillermo del Toro, as he mentions in one of the supplements. And this is a tour de force performance. As I say, it's a performance that relies on nonverbal communication, and that's in no way that I don't want that to sound like in any way kind of an impediment or anything like that. On the contrary, it's not. It's not. This is who she is. Eliza, the character, is who she is, and her dreams and her relationship with the creature and also the other people in her life. The symbolism of water and also the actual interactions with water, not just water out of the faucet or in the bathtub, but also rain and also the water in the bucket that's being used to clean, and also kind of a way into her own, say, liberation, so as having a dreamlike quality when you're submerged underwater, and also the kind of the ramifications of this in the context of the plot. I mean, uh, Sally Hawkins is marvelous, just enchanting and marvelous. I first became aware of Sally Hawkins in a film which is directed by Mike Leigh, and the film is called All or Nothing. And I'm a big fan of the works of Mike Leigh, and such as Career Girls and Naked and Life is Sweet, and All or Nothing is another. I'm a big fan of All or Nothing, and one of the great standouts in that film, All or Nothing, is Sally Hawkins, and she gives this dynamite performance in that film. And then there's another film that she appeared in, directed by Mike Leigh, which is called Happy Go Lucky, and that really kind of just catapulted her into sort of the stratosphere, I think, in terms of her popularity and name recognition, sort of critical reactions and reception to her as an actor. And so her performance here in The Shape of Water is just another example of the greatness that is the acting prowess of Sally Hawkins. I mean, this is a performance. This is a performance, my dear friends. This is a performance among great performances in this, and the playful nature of Guillermo del Toro's touch. What do they call? I think they really should introduce the phrase, the Del Toro touch, because really anything he touches, it seems, turns to gold. Um, he touches water here in The Shape of Water, it just turns to gold. I mean, everything. And you can tell that he loves cinema. He absolutely loves cinema. It's just, as I said before, this film is, among other things, it's a love letter to cinema from signed Guillermo del Toro. And that's what this is. And it's lovely. It's infectious. It's heartwarming. It's engaging. It's suspenseful. It's horrific. I mean, there are some scenes that are really horrific that come straight out of a horror film. It's very direct and frank. There are some scenes of frank handling of sexual intimacy and sexual matters, and there's also some scenes involving, as I say, the cat and mouse chase aspect of a spy, Cold War spy political thriller, and it's also it's a heartwarming human drama story, or lines of stories. And it's a Guillermo del Toro film. What else can I say? The del Toro touch is alive and well in works like this. This is an amazing achievement, and I'm really happy that the Criterion Collection has this on display. Yet another del Toro film in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog, and we're all in a better position as cinema goers and as cinema lovers because of it. What a wonderful addition we have here in 2024. This is the film which is The Shape of Water. The Criterion Collection has released this film, The Shape of Water, on this 2024 release. This is the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition, which means there are two discs, the 4K UHD disc and then the Blu-ray disc. I have the 4K disc in the machine behind me, and then the Blu-ray disc we'll talk about later when we talk about the supplements, etc. This is described on the back of the box, the back of the tin, as being, again, from 2017, in color, 5.1 surround, 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio, and it's also described as a 4K digital master supervised by director Guillermo del Toro with 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack. And then the 4K UHD disc, presented in HDR, and the Blu-ray, and then we have the separate Blu-ray. Standard dynamic range, my assumption is. And the reason why I've read it here is because I've pulled out the the fold-out insert, which is part of the Criterion release. And normally there might be some notes in the fold-out release, fold-out insert, or the booklet about the master, about the restoration. Here, for The Shape of Water, there is no such description in the fold, at least as far as I can see, about the master. And so the information that we get is, among other places, the what we have on the back of the box, the back of the tin. So I can maybe reasonably surmise that the reason that it's not mentioned here is because it's a, relatively speaking, recent film. I mean, this is from 2017, and so perhaps it's not a question of restoring based on film materials from, say, a number of years past, but we already have a film that's, relatively speaking, quite fresh and already quite preserved from a technological or digital perspective. And so we have the presentation of this in terms of the physical media release here. So that's my reasonable, I think it's reasonable anyway, of surmising of why there isn't any specific indication of the master details here beyond what we have on the back of the box. But that's okay. That's absolutely okay. I mean, it looks and sounds brilliant. I mean, if you have the equipment capable of taking advantage of the HDR and the 5.1 surround, it's definitely worth it. So so yes, please check it out if you can, in terms of how it looks and sounds on the Criterion release. And oh, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that when I had the 4K disc in the machine, the Blu-ray menu, or the 4K disc menu, was one where it was a montage of moving images with some sound overlaid. So it's a really lovely assembly of images, moving images. But again, for purposes of, or for the reason of not wanting to offend the YouTube copyright system, the YouTube copyright gods, I've just blocked it out for purposes of this YouTube video. So I hope you can forgive me. I don't mean any offense or affront to your YouTube video watching sensibilities in terms of my very poor presentation skills. But I hope you can forgive me. That's the reason why. But it's a really great 4K UHD disc menu, and also a Blu-ray disc menu, because now what I've done is I've taken the 4K disc out. I've put the Blu-ray disc in the machine. As I mentioned earlier, you have your choice with this release of the film. You have your choice of watching the film either on the 4K UHD disc, HDR, or you can watch the film again on the Blu-ray. And I think for me, it looks great and it sounds great with either choice you decide upon. But the Blu-ray is what I have in the machine because I want to now talk about the supplements. Again, as per customary with these sorts of Criterion releases, Criterion has the film on both discs, but if you're going to go watch the supplements, you have to watch the supplements on the Blu-ray disc. I don't see any commentary track, so there's no commentary track to speak of here, but we do have supplements. And so I'll go to the Blu-rays supplements menu, and we have quite a number, in fact. And so the first is Guillermo del Toro and David Lowery. And so I pressed it, and I'm going to go back and go back to the menu, and that's my way of illustrating that when you press that part, it doesn't take you to a little written description in the menu of what the discussion is. But I always like those descriptions. I'm curious as to why there is no written description of that here, but it's missed. At least I miss it. But that's okay. It's a very minor criticism because this is a great conversation between the two of them, Guillermo del Toro and David Lowery, two artists, two filmmakers, kind of kindred spirits as they describe them as themselves. They wanted to meet each other. And this is a 26-minute conversation between the two artists. And it's great, focusing primarily on Guillermo del Toro's work, and specifically The Shape of Water, although there is reference to some of the works by David Lowery. So it's a really overall quite well-rounded and a great discussion. You can tell that the filmmakers have a mutual respect for each other's work and approaches to cinema. And also there are some number of similarities that one can say, especially for those who are familiar with the works of David Lowery and other films by Guillermo del Toro. There's a lot of overlap and similarity, one can say. So it's great to see this. But speaking about the Shape of Water, the conversation in this great conversation turns to some interesting details about the creature from the Black Lagoon, Universal horror films, and they have a mutual love for the film. It's great to see there's a book, a library book discussion that comes into the folds of the conversation quite nicely. So that's really cool. And then there's a discussion too about filming this in color and also sort of the folds of the drama. Guillermo del Toro makes reference to the films of um, Emmerich Pressburger, Michael Powell, specifically Black Narcissus, which is also in the Criterion Collection, by the way. And he says, Black Narcissus is one of the great uses of color. It's one of the great films ever, and it's hard not to agree with that. I mean, it's really a great standout film. It's lovely to hear that being cited as being a kind of reference point for this, or one of the reference points. And also, he speaks too about. The makeup of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and celebrating sort of and mentioning Millicent Patrick, which is a great call out reference, really lovely. And also to the two artists here speak about how it's almost a need for them artistically to be limited in resources. They almost say that if they surmise that perhaps if they were unlimited in resources like budget and unlimited, say, technological advances at their disposal. If that were the case, then maybe they wouldn't create an artistically effective film. So it's almost that they need to have some kind of limitation. And here, so that's a really interesting take, and so that also leads into a number of the works of Guillermo del Toro, for instance, that have a certain reliance on, say, visual special effect spectacle in a very effective way, but those do have their inherent limitations, and so it's how to either overcome those limitations or how to take advantage of them in a way that's cinematically effective. And if that's the case, you can definitely say that the world of the world of The Shape of Water really is a great example of this. And he talks to, Guillermo del Toro talks to about anecdotes he has about, for instance, reactions that he has to a film like The 7-Year Itch. Sorry about that. He also speaks about the tone of the film, how to capture the tone effectively. It's a fable. It's a fairy tale captured on film. There's sort of childlike tendencies in trying to capture that, while also it's a film that's very adult in terms of some of the areas in which it goes and explores. And so it's an interesting balance and mix. And I think Guillermo del Toro is a great artist, if for anything, I mean, for many reasons, one of which being the ability to mix styles and tones and balancing those in a really effective way. So it's a childlike fable fairy tale on the one hand. It's also a film that is dealing, I think, very sensitively and very effectively with certain maybe mature themes of say sexuality and identity. So really effective, and as well as other aspects. Um, and that's which it'll come up in one of the other supplements, but there's a shot scene that happens, I think, at the very beginning of the film, where he shot it, what is the phrase, dry for wet. So he talks about some of the background production details, one of which being how to shoot water. And there's one scene in particular where it was a dry set. It wasn't a water submerged set, but they shot it in a way and they lit it in a way so it looked like it was underwater. So it was a really effective scene. It looks like it's underwater when you watch the scene. It's great. But there are other scenes too that involve an actual water tank and being in the water and the actors submerged in water and needing to act in the water. It's a really crucial scene between Doug Jones and Sally Hawkins, by the way. So very cool. Oh, also, I love how he references Project X and Splash. Two great classics from the 1980s. I saw both of those films in the theater, by the way. So when I heard him mention those films in this conversation, I thought, oh my goodness, that's exactly right. This is just like Project X. This is just like Splash. Oh, fantastic. And he speaks too about the performances, Michael Shannon, Octavia Spencer, Richard Jenkins, Doug Jones, and the suit that was required and the like, and needing to be very physical in terms of the underwater scenes, etc. Um, uh, Michael Shannon and Michael Stuhlbarg, and also speaking about Sally Hawkins and the discovery of Sally Hawkins for him being a film called Submarine, which is another great. Oh my goodness, Sally Hawkins is and Guillermo del Toro speaks so glowingly of the Sally Hawkins performance. It's a very, very nuanced and very sensitive, very challenging performance that she pulls it off spectacularly. So it's great for that. And Guillermo del Toro says something so fascinating here. I mean, everything that they both say is great here. But one of the things he says is about cinema is what does he say? Movie making is like an amalgam of perfect planning and pure discovery, which is kind of like a great the essence of creativity, successful creative or artistically successful creativity, whatever that might mean, whatever form that might take. But that is a really profound statement. All in all, this is a wonderful conversation between the two artists, the two here, David Lowery and Guillermo del Toro. So please check it out if you can. It's approximately 26 minutes. Okay, so let's continue on. So the next supplement that I want to speak about is the second listed here, which is called A Fairy Tale for Troubled Times. And then if you see when I press the button for that, it then gives us a little description. So that wasn't the case for the first supplement, the discussion with Guillermo del Toro and David Lowery, unfortunately. But it is true for the Fairy Tale or A Fairy Tale for Troubled Times supplement. This is, it says, and I quote, directed by Javier Soto, this 4-part documentary on the making of The Shape of Water features interviews with the cast and crew. So it says 4 parts, but let's see. I would say that it's totaling yes, it's approximately 6 minutes or so, I think, and each segment is about 6 minutes. Yes, it's about 5 or 6 minutes totaling. So it's divided into, it says it's divided into 4 parts, but it's sort of played, I think, continuously. At least that's how I was able to play it. So the first part here is focusing in on this being a kind of dream project, fairy tale for troubled times. I think that's where the title comes from for this piece. It's a kind of realistic period piece in the 60s, and talking about the idea, from Guillermo del Toro and others about this is a love story. It's about focusing, this idea too of love and sex and sexual intimacy, and the idea of connection and sex being sort of the fusing of two souls, as del Toro and others describe it. And also, it's interesting how he mentions how the characters Zelda and Giles and Eliza are, in a sense, like 3 parts of the same character, which I thought was an interesting way of describing it. They have their own kind of drive or purpose, which is spurned on or inspired by maybe certain circumstances that are part of their own lives respectively. There's a kind of path of similarity there with each of the characters. That's also fascinating. And there's a kind of unity involved too when they pool their resources, in a manner of speaking, and as far as the film is concerned. So it's a really fascinating comment here. So that could be said to be sort of the first segment of this. And the second segment could be said to be about the creature design, and how it was, how this was, Del Toro really went to great lengths to try to get the design right. He says that there was a certain component where he was so believing in the project that he wanted to self-finance some of the creature design aspect of it, doing a model design work, working with people like Mike Hill, and also the creature design too, about making this aquatic creature, amphibian creature, having human-like attributes, and also too very handsome and very striking looking, almost just having his own sex appeal, which I thought was an interesting way. And that led to inspiration in terms of designing the face and facial features. And then speaking of the facial features, the visage, relying to a certain degree on computer effects to get some of the aspects of the facial movements just right. and also the designing of the suit itself, and also the way in which the performance, the Doug Jones performance, needed to rely a lot on body language in order to go along with this idea of communication. Again, going along with the way in which the characters, the creature and Eliza, communicate non-verbally. For the most part, anyway. So this is the second component, and then the third component could be said to be focusing in on production design elements, art design elements, the costumes that were important for the period, because this is a period film in a manner of speaking, set in the 60s America, and also the color designs. There are moments where the costumes would give rise to flashes of red color to indicate bursts of passion. And those do occur at very precise, calculated points in the film. And then also there's uh, the design of, say, the laboratory, the research center, some of the exterior scenes. There's a scene involving a diner. There's also a scene involving an apartment, which I didn't realize. There is a little neat thing about the walls, and it's revealed here about there is almost a kind of hidden Japanese work of art that is painted into the wall. It's depicting oceans and waves, and how this is then essentially embedded into the wall, and it's roughed over. And so you can barely notice it in the film, but if you stand and note it and are aware of it, you can actually kind of make it out. It's almost like the shape of water itself is already written in the walls, which is a really uh, neat little detail. It's one of those unseen details that's just really cool. And then the maybe the other component of this is talking about the music. The music is by Alexander Desplat, and getting the tone just right. There's also an interesting detail about, speaking of sort of unseen or unheard details, although I'm sure those who are much more musically or maybe sonically astute than I would probably have picked it up. I certainly didn't when I first heard it, but now that it was mentioned in this documentary, I think, oh yeah, I didn't realize it when I heard it, but now that you mention it, oh yes, there's the employment of a whistle on some moments of the score, which is an interesting detail, among others. So overall, this is a fascinating documentary, which is, I think, really well serving of the film. So I recommend this very much. So this is A Fairy Tale for Troubled Times. So please check it out if you can. Next is Anatomy of a Scene prologue, and when I press it, it goes straight into the Anatomy of the Scene prologue. So there's no descriptive sub menu here as part of the Criterion release. So that's a shame, but it's okay because it goes right into it. It's kind of like a little making of featurette. Breaking down a particular scene. Here it's the prologue, which is part of it has a voiceover part and also the credits part and the like, and so it's meant to be like the opening titles or the opening montage of the film. And this is one of our main characters, Eliza, uh, um, the Sally Hawkins character, essentially seen in water dreaming, or seen to be sleeping, and the inside of the water is perhaps suggestive of a dream or a fairy tale, and there's a sense of a non-reality of sorts. And this was mentioned a little bit elsewhere uh, in the other supplements, but this was shot dry for wet, meaning that it was the actual circumstances of the shoot was to shoot in not underwater, but to shoot with certain lighting and effects and floating effects to replicate being underwater, and then the actual film would suggest being underwater, but in fact it was shot not underwater. So it's an interesting trick of cinematic illusion trade, which I think is great. You see this happening in a number of films. Not quite off topic, but there's a James Bond film from the early 1980s called For Your Eyes Only, and I think there are a lot of scenes that were shot in stages, but on sound stages and the like, but it was meant to be pretending to be underwater, but it was actually not underwater, but they used special effects to try to replicate being underwater. So a similar kind of concept is being employed here at great effect in this film. So well done for that. That's one scene, Anatomy of the Scene. The next one is Anatomy of a Scene, the dance. And this is a reference to another key moment in the film, where you can say that the film breaks into a song and dance musical number. And so it was the philosophy behind the scene, according to Del Toro, was to try to kind of have a break in the narrative in a manner. I mean, if you can describe this in many ways, I think one way to call it is indeed a break. It does feel like a wonderful, wonderful sense of a break in the action, but it's also very much part of the overall aesthetic, and it's stylistically arguably different from what we've seen thus far, but it's also very integral and organic to the whole work. And it's also an homage to 30s and 40s Hollywood musicals. And I really like this further breakdown of that. According to Del Toro, he was patterning it after two fundamental parts, which is the sort of 1930s, 1940s musical on the one hand, and sort of the MGM musical as he mentions it here, the aesthetics of those black and white musicals on the one hand, but then also relying on camera movement and a kind of sweep, which he said is very reminiscent or not homage to, like, for instance, Stanley Donen musicals, which is also I'm a huge fan of Donen's work. So it's great to hear him mention. I mean, this is the thing with Del Toro. He mentions all these film references, which is absolutely amazing. So it's sort of a breakdown of this scene and also seeing how the characters interact, and it's a really fascinating way they interact. It's almost completely opposite to how we perceive them throughout the other remaining parts of the film. But it's still very much inherently who they are. So it's really great. So we see how this scene was essentially prepared. Wonderful. So that's Anatomy of the Scene, the dance. So please check that out if you can. And then we have Shaping the Waves, a conversation with James Jean. So this is, again, I press it, and unfortunately there is no descriptive here as part of the Criterion release, Blu-ray menu or submenu, which is that's okay. But in terms of his work as an artist, he's talking about his background as an artist, and he shows some of his sketches and his concept art, and also his idea of what is referred to as a kind of alternative poster. And he breaks down one of the key images, which is derived from key points in the film, essentially an embrace between our two main characters. And he goes into sort of the breakdown as to how this was derived and why it is he chose this particular component. It's very fascinating. So please check this out if you can. So this is Shaping the Waves with a conversation with James Jean. And then Masterclass, The Shape of Water. I press it again, and alas, unfortunately, there's no description with regard to this particular supplement, but this is okay. This is, I think, in a Zanuck Theater in Los Angeles, California. It's approximately 13 minutes. But it's in a theater in front of a live audience. It's a kind of Q&A session, but as the title suggests, Masterclass, The Shape of Water. This is where Del Toro and members of the crew are sitting on stage, and essentially to a lovely, welcoming audience, they talk about the specifics. And Del Toro says, this is let's go into some of the technical specifics about this. So he goes into some of the visual effects integration details, which is fascinating. He talks too about creature design, all the way down to things like the gills on the fish and the back, or the creature, to also be a means by which you can show the emotion of the character. He's talking about all these details and trying to render the humanity of the character. And also talking about costumes and costume choices. For instance, with the character, the Michael Shannon character of Strickland, he says there is a kind of strict perfectionism that is on display, even in the way in which his suit is so pressed and clean and well fitted as to be almost restrictive and tight, which is, I think, very much apropos of the character. So he's trying to use this as an example to say, this is our way to by which we can showcase some aspects of the character through what it is they choose to wear. Um, and also talking about the sets and set design and also the underwater set. There's a key. We talked about the prologue and how that was shot dry for wet, but then there's also another scene in a bathroom, and where there's a bathtub, and in fact that is a scene where we have our main characters together in a room, and it's actually being done in a water tank, I think, in a set. So this is really fascinating, and too, it's really Del Toro is just full. He's like a wonderful, excited a child in a playground. He's just his enthusiasm is without bounds here, and he talks about the award season, because I think at the time they were making this, the film was already beginning to get a lot of awards buzz and the circuit festival buzz and also these awards categories. And as we know, we're speaking in 2024, this film, The Shape of Water, had a huge critical and awards reaction for the film and also for Del Toro in a number of arenas. So it was really exciting. But he here, I think, in the early stages of the award season, as it were. And he says something really interesting. He says, this is a film that's really coming from his heart. This is a film that really could be said to be representative of who he is. And he says he's really happy about that. He makes a film that's this monster movie, kind of a love story between a human and a fish. And so it's that kind of, he's getting critical praise and awards, laudatory attention on this. So he's like, this is the life. That's essentially what he says. So his enthusiasm is just boundless, which I really love. Anyway, Masterclass. What did I say? It's approximately 13 minutes, so please check that out as well. And then the last section is devoted to the trailers, and so we have a number of trailers here to round out the supplements section here. So I think all in all, it's a really great section of supplements. I don't see any commentary track. Right, I don't have any notes here about a commentary track. So my understanding is no commentary track is featured here, which is a shame. I'm always a fan of a good commentary track. Not all commentary tracks, so I mean, are home runs. I get it, but it would have been nice to have had a commentary track. Still, we have a number of great supplements to accompany us in terms of our Criterion release of The Shape of Water. And so now let's conclude our conversation by focusing in on some of the aspects of the physical media release here. As I mentioned, this is the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition from Criterion of The Shape of Water. Here we have two discs in this in this plastic casing. The two discs are here. The inner sleeve portion is a sort of a plain dark olive green background, perhaps meant to suggest the scale color of the fish creature or the amphibian creature in question. But it's a nice choice. But we have the discs here. The 4K disc is on the front, and the Blu-ray is behind. I think it's the same design for both the Blu-ray and the 4K disc. So we have this art design here, which is, if you can see, it's a really nice suggestion of part of the film, and plus we have a number of sketches, artistic renderings in the fold-out leaflet insert. Here is one such. Here's the side, which shows, I think, really lovely detail. So these are really great. In terms of the art, I should point out that the credits indicate art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, illustration Greg Ruth, designer Eric Skillman. So really, really nice there. Talking about the leaflet, I'm not a fan of the fold-out type. I much rather see the glue-bound booklet or the staple booklet because it has more possibility for a robust number of pages, etc. But this is okay because there's another great, unbeatable, lovely essay by Carlos Aguilar called "A Touch of the Unknown." It has a lovely reach in terms of the placement of this film in the context of the Del Toro body of work, sort of the thematic concerns of the film. Really a kind of great deep dive and very well written, a touch of the unknown. My strong suggestion, as with all other essays, is to first watch the film, and then after you see the film, you can read the great essay, which is again part of the insert folder, which will go right there. And then I will snap the plastic casing shut and put it back here, and that will conclude what my thoughts are on The Shape of Water and the Criterion release with respect to this film. Another strong release, another great Del Toro work. It seems like the relationship between, say, Del Toro's body of work and the Criterion Collection physical media catalog is going strong, and it seems like 2024 going into 2025 that will continue, and hopefully that means maybe the possibility of more films to come or to emerge or re-emerge, as the case may be, when we get into 2025. But 2024 is leaving us, I think, in a really good position with this great release of a great film from a great filmmaker, that being Guillermo del Toro's incredible work of art, entertaining, incredible work of art, which is The Shape of Water. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including The Shape of Water, including other films by Guillermo del Toro, including other films in the Criterion Collection, and beyond. So until we see each other again, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.